Hi there, and welcome everyone. Today I am going to talk about Ascension symptoms, something you've probably read or heard about for some time now. In fact, you may have been experiencing them for a number of years at this point, and perhaps you've been very aware of them. They're usually kind of perplexing experiences, some of them exciting, and others rather challenging. And maybe you've known them to be due to the awakening process that has been occurring since the Earth began to accelerate its shift in 2012 into a much higher frequency known as the fifth dimension. You've known that this is a profoundly significant event in the Earth's history that's now occurring, and that humanity is being compelled to shift into a much higher consciousness in order to match this higher frequency. So these symptoms make sense to you. But maybe this kind of information is kind of new to you. Perhaps you've just felt a lot of confusing things happening to you lately, both physically and psychologically, and sometimes felt maybe something was wrong, that you were somehow off in how you were living your life or in how you were handling challenges that were arising or whatever, but you had no idea why this might be happening. Well, either way, whether you've been aware of what it's all about or not, it might be apparent to you that lately these odd and puzzling changes happening to you have intensified. Somehow the heat is really on now, and even more profound and inexplicable changes are occurring. You're having to navigate really uncharted territories in your life that you've never had to travel through before. And in a certain way at times, maybe you don't even know who you are anymore because so many changes have occurred. Well, it's helpful to understand that all of this is because we really are at that point now where huge changes need to take place if we're going to successfully make the shift into 5D. And have no doubt about it, Ascension is a profound transformational process. We are being compelled to let go of all old emotional patterns that no longer serve us, all effects of traumas we've ever experienced, and all relationships, habits, and ways of operating that keep us in a low frequency. In fact, we're needing to leave behind a way of life that people have been living for thousands of years. We're being called to let go of an entire set of beliefs about who we are, what life is, and even what reality itself is. We need to let go of all of it and see what is now present and real as we continue to make this profound transition into the fifth dimension. So symptoms of this transformational process can get pretty intense at times. And it can be helpful to be very aware of what they are, because they can be both confusing and sometimes even scary at times if you're not aware of what's going on. And this is partly because it can seem like there's no apparent cause for them when they happen. And at times, it can feel like there's something really wrong with you. So I'm going to describe some of the most common of these symptoms here, and also how you can best handle them. And hopefully in hearing about them, you can feel a sense of relief, realizing that there's nothing wrong with you and you're not going crazy. You're simply experiencing a really profound and necessary process for making the transformation into fifth dimensional reality. And you can also realize that you're not alone in experiencing them, which can also help you feel better. So, in general, I think we can probably say that during these times, there could be the experience of no no longer feeling like we're standing on solid ground, right? Shifting sands are appearing everywhere under our feet these days. It's as if we're standing in two different worlds at once, functioning in both the old familiar third dimension and also in the new energies of the fourth and fifth dimensions. And at times we feel like we're experiencing enormous energetic shifts that can just leave us reeling. Or another, maybe more positive way we might describe it would be that a marriage between spirit and matter seems to be taking place. We're beginning to integrate with our higher selves, and we're embodying more light. But even from this perspective, life can become so strange and unfamiliar that it's still very disorienting and even scary at times. So I'm going to start out describing symptoms that tend to be disturbing and challenging and confusing, and explain why they're happening. And these are both physical and psychological symptoms. And then I will describe some of the Ascension symptoms that we could call positive, which can help to balance out the more challenging ones. Because they exist too, and hopefully you'll be able to relate at least to some of them. So let's start with common physical Ascension symptoms that people are typically experiencing. Uncomfortable and puzzling ones that may be happening for you. And these are symptoms that often tend to have no medical explanation. They confuse doctors if you go to a doctor for them. And they're often temporary. They come and they go. So that's one way you can recognize them. And one of the most common ones is aches and pains in your body that seem to happen out of nowhere, especially headaches, in which you can feel sharp pain maybe, or pressure, or maybe a buzzing, or a sensation directly on your crown chakra. So headaches are really common, but it's really any kind of pain in your body that kind of comes and goes. Another really common one is exhaustion. This is a good one to remember because it's easy to forget sometimes. You can get really irritated by this one and also somewhat worried because it can sometimes last for many days, even weeks, no matter what you do. You may find that sleep and rest are sometimes essential just to keep going. And even if you do get a lot of sleep, you'll still wake up exhausted. But remember, a lot is going on in your body during these times of ascension as it struggles to keep up with your rising consciousness. And it's also dealing with difficult emotions that weigh it down. Okay, so then there's digestive problems. You may be finding that you need to change your diet and be more careful about what you eat now. Your body is demanding healthier food. You maybe can't get away with the comfort food you've been used to eating like you used to. And, it's just really important to realize that you need to tune into your body and see what it's telling you that it wants, rather than depending on diets that experts are recommending. Every body is unique, and its needs are unique, especially during these times. And these needs may be changing from week to week, so you need to stay in touch with your stomach and see what it's telling you it wants to eat and doesn't want to eat. Don't pay attention to your tongue, because that's a whole different story. Your stomach knows what it wants to eat and what's best for your whole body. So that's digestion. But another really common one is sleep issues. Either, like I say, you need to sleep many more hours than usual, or you're experiencing insomnia, something that maybe has never really happened for you before. A lot of people are going through, all kinds of weird sleep issues. And it's just part of ascension. Then there's hypersensitivity. And this can be to sounds or to smells, to foods, to chemicals, to bright lights. All of them having to do with your nervous system that's trying to adjust to the new frequencies coming in. And then there's mind fog, or high-pitched ear ringing, or dizziness, or dry or blurry eyes. And at times, kind of a flu. It's not COVID, it's just like when you feel like you're spontaneously detoxing. Or a very common one is when old injuries or illnesses reappear after being dormant for a long time and you thought you were finished with them. Or it could be chronic conditions that you've had that are now suddenly heightened for a while, even though they seem to be healing before. It can all be very confusing. But the thing to understand, if you're having symptoms like any of these, is that they do make sense. The physical body is very dense, right? And during this period in which your consciousness is rising so rapidly, your body is constantly having to adjust, to recalibrate to the higher frequency that your consciousness is shifting into. Your brain is being rewired. Your electromagnetic fields are being reconfigured. Your organs are shifting in vibration. You're bound to have aches and pains and other body disorders for a while. And if you can realize that what you're experiencing are probably ascension symptoms, it can just be easier. There's less reason to worry. Now, of course, if you're experiencing prolonged and uncomfortable symptoms, even if they are due to ascension, it's important to take care of yourself. It's wise to see a doctor or a health practitioner and get some relief. There's no need to suffer. But the main thing is to realize there's probably more going on than meets the eye. And you need to be compassionate with your body. Be careful not to fall into irritation or impatience toward it. What it's undergoing in this transition is major. This rising in frequency and shifting into lesser density is quite a feat for it. So be gentle with your body. So those are probably the most common physical ascension symptoms that people seem to be having. How about psychological changes? There are a lot of these too that you can probably relate to. In general, I think we can say that people are experiencing an enormous amount of change and uncertainty in their lives. In some cases, their whole lives are falling apart. And at times, like I was saying, you may wonder who you actually are anymore because you're becoming unfamiliar even to yourself. You may no longer be able to predict anything accurately about yourself or about what will probably be happening in your life. Everything seems to be shifting around uncomfortably. You may feel like you're on a roller coaster that both revisits your past and brings you into new territory without any reference points. It can feel chaotic and unsettling a lot of the times. And within all this shifting into unfamiliar territory, what is maybe occurring for you from time to time is a lot of emotional pain and upset. Usually revisiting of old and heavy emotions and memories that arise seemingly out of nowhere sometimes. Emotions you thought you left far behind you. You're discovering that unresolved conflicts and traumas from the past are again surfacing, demanding your attention and a lot of healing. And depression and anxiety may move in, along with self-doubt, and guilt and shame, and debilitating despair at times. Or maybe it's rage, or judgmentalness, or self-hatred. Some of these periods of intense emotional upset don't even make sense. And how about mood swings? Maybe you've never had these before, but now you're realizing that you've been dipping lower or rising higher in your moods than you ever used to. Shifting from, the negative, blah, 3D consciousness into happy, peaceful, positive 5D consciousness from one day to the next. Sometimes for no apparent reason. And what's interesting is how both the joyful, uplifting experiences and the challenging, unhappy ones can sometimes arise and fade very quickly and follow upon, one upon the other really, really fast. Even the most emotionally steady among us may swing from a mood of cheerful optimism to an experience of intense pain and confusion to a feeling of exhilarating joy, all in one day. And sometimes all even at the same time. None of it makes any sense. You're just shifting back and forth from 3D to 5D to 3D again during these times of ascension. It's just all part of the process. And it's also important to be aware that when you do choose to focus on healing, remember that often periods of upset and challenging emotions are due to hidden, unresolved reactive patterns from the past that have been pushed down into the unconscious because they were too hard to face at the time when they were activated. But now they're resurfacing because you can't bring your unresolved 3D baggage with you into 5D. Whatever doesn't resonate with 5D has to be left behind. So it's being pushed to the surface now. It's coming up to be seen so that you can resolve and release it. And you will find you are able to do it now, even if you couldn't in the past when something happened. However, if a low vibrational state lasts for any length of time, it is important to delve more deeply into its cause and find a way to meet the emotions successfully so as to resolve them. Just becoming aware of them can be helpful, but some of these things you really do have to pay attention to and heal. During these times when dark and disturbing information about the world and humanity's plight is being released, deep emotions and memories are probably going to be surfacing from your unconscious mind. And these can be from this lifetime, but they may also be from past lives when you were involved in deeply painful situations that may be similar to what's occurring on the planet today. Think about it. It makes sense, right? Often when you've experienced trauma in your life and felt overwhelming emotions you couldn't handle at the time, these emotions, along with negative core beliefs attached to them, have retreated to a resting place in your unconscious. They've resided there with the memories from past lives that you were also not yet ready to meet and integrate. And this tucking away of traumas into the unconscious has generally been helpful in that you could usually find a way to continue functioning in your life for the time being. You were not entirely free of them, as they could get activated in similar future experiences, but for the most part, you could pretty much forget about them in your day-to-day life. But now, during these times of ascension, this is no longer true. When your vibration is rising, all this unexplored emotion and trauma must surface from the unconscious to be understood and processed and then released. Again, it can't go with you into the fifth dimension. So another very common symptom for people is loss. And this can be financial loss, loss in your state of health, loss in your relationships, loss of your work, loss of your home. Really awful losses for some people. If any of this is happening to you, remember there's probably a good reason for it. If something in your life is not aligned with the higher vibration you're moving into, it likely needs to go in order to make room for something of a higher vibration. You need to do your best to not hang on to what you're losing. Let it go. Trust that it needs to go for you to ascend into a higher consciousness and for something else of a higher frequency to come in to replace what you've lost. And also be careful not to interpret any loss you're experiencing as punishment for something you've done or not done. A lot of people do this, automatically asking, oh, what did I do wrong? Why was that taken away from me? What's wrong with me? It's important to understand that loss is not punishment. It's just a readjustment. If events or people or situations of a higher vibration are coming into your life, things of a lower vibration have to leave. And this may not be apparent at first, but just wait and see what happens, and you might be surprised. So then, another really common ascension symptom involves challenging relationship issues, right? And it's helpful to understand that we're in a period now in which many old relationships in people's lives are dissolving. And this is because karmic bonds are loosening. Karma with family and old friends and colleagues is coming to completion as humanity shifts into a higher frequency. And also, by the way, because the technology of the karmic wheel is collapsing now. You may be realizing that you have nothing in common anymore with certain family members or old friends. You may find that they seem to be functioning in a lower vibration than you. Maybe they're still into blame or self-pity or self-absorption that you just can't relate to very much anymore. Or that they're completely asleep to what's really happening in the world and have no desire to wake up to what you are aware of. So it feels uncomfortable for you to be with them for very long, if at all anymore. And this can be especially hard if you have a partner or a spouse that you feel this way about. If you do, it may be time to really talk with this person, to clean up conflicts, reveal secrets and lies that may have been ignored over the years, and just see what each of you is feeling and wanting now from the relationship. And doing this may end up strengthening your relationship. Or you may realize it's time to separate at this point and go your own ways, because that's really what's been happening anyway, and it will be a relief. It's important to realize that not every soul on earth is deciding to ascend at this time. Everyone's being given the opportunity to do this, but not all are deciding to do it. For some, it would just be too difficult. They may need more experience in 3D and 4D reality. So if you sense this to be the case with someone you're close to, it's important to just let them go on their own path, wherever it takes them. You, of course, won't stop loving them, but maybe you don't need to spend as much time with them as you have been before. If you're experiencing a lot of loss of relationships like this, where family and friends are drifting away, and your sense of identity has been greatly based on your roles in these relationships, you may initially feel a sense of being untethered or very alone and confused about your sense of identity, about who you are now as these relationships fall away. A lot of people really do base their sense of identity on the relationships that they've had. But again, just wait and see what happens. You may be seeing that new people are coming into your life now. And if so, focus on them. You might realize that they're people who match you better in frequency. Know that people are waking up all over the planet now, and they are finding each other, people who feel like soul family, soul tribe. So you may be finding your own soon. So another rather strange ascension symptom is a weird sense of disorientation that you can experience. And this can manifest in different ways. Like, you could be feeling that you're not all here at times. You know that feeling? But you have no idea where the rest of you is. Or there's a sensation that the outer world has become more dreamlike, more surreal. You don't belong there anymore somehow. Or it's a feeling that you're living in two different realities depending on where you are or who you're with. Perhaps you're also having strange experiences with time. It's becoming fluid somehow now. It sometimes seems to stretch. A day just goes on and on and on. And other times it condenses. You don't know where the whole day went to, but here it is night already. Or you're clearly remembering things that other people remember very differently. If this is happening, you might be interested in a phenomenon that's been called the Mandela effect. You can Google this. Or you can research timeline jumping, which is kind of related. The whole subject really is fascinating. Somehow, linear time is definitely getting very weird now that we're in the fourth dimension. It'll be disappearing at some point when we're fully in the fifth. But for now, it's just getting very strange. And you might also experience space weirdnesses, like where you're misjudging distances somehow. You're bumping into things. Or you're dropping things as you're trying to place them on a counter. Or you can suddenly become aware you don't know where you are. You can be driving along in your car, and for a few seconds, you draw a complete blank as to where you are or where you're going. What complicates things also is the experience of memory loss that can happen at any time. And this is something that seems to come and go, and it's not just related to aging, as some people think. All these types of experiences can be just really disorienting. It's like you're losing your grip on reality somehow, or you're out of control in a way. Or it feels like you're going crazy. But again, this is just part of what living in this transitional space called the fourth dimension is like. Now, another thing to be aware of is that at times you may also be experiencing fear or anger or other emotions that you're picking up from the greater collective consciousness of the planet, or from a particular group of people that is experiencing specific traumas at that time. It's not even your own stuff that you're feeling. And this is often the case if you're especially empathic. And you can find nothing going on in your own life that could be causing you to feel such emotions. As you know, there's a great deal of turmoil happening in the world at this point, and you're likely very tuned into it at times on the energetic level. So it's just good to be aware of this possibility. And you can tell if this is the case because these emotions can generally be met and then released more easily than if they were your own. So it's just helpful to determine if the emotions that you're feeling have originated from within you or from somewhere else. And when you suspect that certain confusing, unexplainable emotions that have suddenly arisen in you are not your own, just ask your inner guidance if this is the case, or do muscle testing for it. And if you receive an affirmative answer, either verbally or on a body energetic level, you can just call in divine light, and the ascended masters and the angels, if you relate to this, and just help release the emotions back to source. And it may take a few minutes, but you will eventually feel a release of the energies. It can feel really good. You'll just be clear. And there's another similar kind of experience that people are having during these times of ascension. And that's when you can discover that the negative emotions you've been feeling aren't your own either, because they are coming from a disembodied entity that has attached to you. Now, this can sound really frightening if the concept is new to you, but it need not be. It's actually, unfortunately, rather common, especially these days. Many people walk around with entities attached to them, and they usually don't even realize it. It's just important to realize that if you're feeling negative and dark for no apparent reason, and you're having recurring negative thoughts that somehow don't feel like your own, you may be dealing with an entity that needs to be released and sent on. And often just having this realization will release them. Or you can stand in your power and firmly tell them to go. Or do other spiritual practices that you know about to raise your vibration so that they're too uncomfortable to stay. They can only stay if your vibration matches theirs. But if your efforts to free yourself of the dark and heavy energies don't work, you can seek a healing from healers who specialize in what's called spirit releasement. And there are a number of them these days out there. Just look them up online. You want to get rid of these because they can really pull you down. And it's not even you. Okay, so now there's one last ascension symptom I want to describe here that can maybe be even more disorienting and confusing than all these others. And I've called it the ascension void. And this is when everything just seems to go kind of flat in your life. Your old interests and passions seem to dim. Nothing really excites you anymore. And you're finding that old beliefs and spiritual teachings that you've had for a long time no longer make much sense or do anything much for you. And assumptions you've had about yourself and about life and reality are proving to be false. You feel confused and disoriented, and times, like I said, you don't even know who you are anymore. Because you feel so different as a person, because of So many of the roles you used to play and identify yourself as are no longer with you. And you can really feel adrift with this, feeling so different from the person you used to be. So it can take a while before a new sense of identity seems to appear. And as a result, you find yourself, meanwhile, pretty much withdrawing from other people. You're just wanting to be alone a lot. You have no real interest in meeting new people or doing things away from home. And so your life gets really small. You feel a lack of interest in learning anything new. There's just a flatness and a boredom that seems to permeate your whole life. And this can go on for months sometimes, or even years in some cases. Or it can come and go in shorter periods of time, which is a little bit easier. But if any of this has happened for you, it may feel as if something's terribly wrong. And what you need to realize is that nothing is wrong. This is just a period in your ascension process in which you're shedding parts of your old 3D identity. And your 5D identity hasn't yet fully shown up. It's a time designed for you to have an internal focus, a time to just let go of your old interests and ideas about your life, what you think you've wanted and what you think you're here to do, and then just see what is left. It's a time of incubation. You're the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. And when all that needs to be swept away is gone, this period will eventually end. The butterfly will come out. And you'll probably feel very different, much lighter than you were. And you may even find yourself stepping into a whole new identity and assuming new, exciting roles, but ones you also feel much more detached from, knowing that they're just roles. They aren't who you are. So if any of this is occurring in your life, don't fight what's happening. See if you can just flow with it and trust that it's part of your awakening process. As you gradually let go of certain aspects of your 3D ego identity, you'll find that a more authentic 5D identity will begin to take hold, and it can be just really glorious at times. Again, it's good to keep in mind that all of these challenging types of symptoms are happening because of how quickly the ascension process is now occurring at this time. It's important to remember that these low-frequency patterns are coming up now in order to be reviewed and resolved and ultimately let go of, so you can make the shift into the higher vibration of the fifth dimension. There's nothing wrong going on when any of this is happening. It's actually a sign that you're well on your path to the fifth dimension. At any rate, let's now turn to a description of some of the most common ascension symptoms that we would call positive. The pleasant, comfortable, and exciting signs that ascension is occurring. In order to kind of balance out all that other stuff, because you can probably relate to these as well. So in general, these positive symptoms would include an increase in spiritual awakening experiences into new realities, or a sense of expansion in your consciousness, or profound realizations about who you really are. And this can come as an awakening when you're meditating maybe, or when you're out in nature, or actually at any moment during your day. Sometimes it'll just really surprise you. And it could also come as a sudden and powerful kundalini experience. A lot of people are having these days. Or it may just be a greater ease you may be experiencing may be experiencing in your life in certain ways, all of them are indications that your consciousness is rising in frequency. And in particular, one of the common positive ascension symptoms people are experiencing is that positive emotions seem to now be more available to them. You know, feelings of love and peace and freedom and joy. They can all somehow be accessed or experienced more easily than before. Maybe you have felt this. It's a greater sense of ease, lightness, and clarity at times. Or maybe experiences of profound inner peace and well-being and harmony. Expanded experiences of oneness, freedom, gratitude. There's a sense it's somehow easier now to experience these emotions even when very serious challenges are occurring in your life. And sometimes you realize that with these experiences, you're waking up to higher aspects of who you are. You have a feeling of greater connection to your higher self, to your multi-dimensional self. And in a certain way, you're experiencing greater detachment about issues in your life. And your old stories of suffering that you've been sharing with people in the past are now pretty boring to you. You're somehow having more experiences in being the witness or the observer in your life, giving you a higher perspective about things. A greater neutrality about difficult situations and relationships. And you discover you also have a greater inner strength than you could ever imagine. And maybe an unlimited capacity to forgive you never thought you'd have. At times you find yourself experiencing an enormous sense of gratitude, maybe. Even for the smallest things. And beauty, which seems to be showing up everywhere around you, occasionally touches you so profoundly that you're reduced to tears. Is any of this familiar? You might even experience at times something that could be called love attacks that descend on you out of nowhere, in which love for someone, or even for everyone and everything, just floods your whole being, causing your chest to expand and leaving you unable to speak. You know, love just suddenly streams in, flowing through you. And it's so powerful that this too brings you to tears. Is any of this familiar? Even when a lot of challenging things are occurring in your life, you nonetheless have periods of time when these positive emotions and moods just seem to spontaneously arise within you. All of these experiences are signs of spiritual awakening, spiritual evolution. You maybe can't maintain these states of consciousness, but they are happening, giving you a taste or a preview of what living in 5D will be like. Another symptom you may be experiencing is increased synchronicities. You happen to see triple numbers on the clock a lot, or even quadruple, 1111. You think about someone you used to know a long time ago, and the next day you run into them on the street. Or maybe you read about a certain person or place or event in a book you're reading, and then that evening you watch a video in which those things surprisingly appear. How can that happen? Or maybe you're wondering about something, you're trying to remember something, and you can't. But then you're standing in line at the grocery store the next day, and someone ahead of you just happens to mention it, and you've got your answer. When you experience these kinds of things, you probably recognize them as signs of confirmation that you're on the right path. Or it could be that what you're thinking of at the moment is something important, so you pay attention to that. Or that there's something happening that you do need to pay attention to, something else that's happening at the same time. You realize that the universe is sending you a message, and you can see that there is purpose in your life. You can feel really good. You're aware that divine orchestration is indeed happening in your life when these things happen. And then there's another really powerful ascension symptom that you may be noticing, that you are somehow in more contact with the subtle worlds these days. You're feeling that the veils are somehow thinning between this reality and others that have been inaccessible to you in previous times. Maybe there's more awareness of celestial beings around you, archangels, or ascended masters, or benevolent galactics. And you're more aware of the presence of your guides in general, giving you support. Your intuitive power to get important messages from them is increasing. And then you may also be discovering that, out of nowhere, you suddenly seem to have new psychic abilities that you haven't had before. Maybe somehow your ability to see into other people and know what they're feeling and thinking is expanding. You're becoming telepathic. Or new information is now within your memory that wasn't there before, like past lives you've lived. And maybe realizations of your spiritual heritage, memories of other planets you've existed on, other galaxies you've visited. Maybe past life memories suddenly surface, even memories of very ancient times when you were in Atlantis or Lemuria, or even from times and places you've lived before coming to Earth. You may even at times actually feel the solar activity that's currently flooding the planet. You're just aware of it in your body. Or you somehow feel events that are occurring on the other side of the planet. You might suddenly feel in tune with whole groups of people in the world you've never even met before. Or maybe you've become aware of healing energies in your hands, information that comes to you that can assist others in their healing process. Perhaps you can sense when dark energies or entities are in someone's field, and you somehow know how to clear these. You don't know how, but the information is just there now. So these are just examples of positive experiences you may be having, or that may begin happening for you at some point. There are many more, but it can be good to identify them and realize they're also part of the ascension process that's occurring within you. It's helpful to remember the balance that's occurring, along with any of the more unpleasant and confusing symptoms. And perhaps, in conclusion, we could say that with all the changes and challenging experiences you may be having, learning trust is one of the most important focuses you can develop, right? You find that you need to trust in the flow that's happening, and also in your own inner guidance. You need to trust that everything truly is happening in the perfect way, that divine orchestration is occurring in every area of your life because it truly is now. And the key is just to keep going forward on the path that's unfolding before you, no matter what. See where the flow is, where there is movement, and just move forward. And keep remembering that you're in the middle of a profound transformation, a shifting from a very low third dimensional frequency to a much higher one. So it's bound at times to be disorienting and uncomfortable and sometimes frightening. And it's also helpful to keep remembering that you are now on your way home. If you're someone who feels like you've somehow been just dropped here on earth and abandoned in this strange and uncomfortable place, like a lot of starseeds do, you will at some point soon be finding your way back to a reality that you know to be home. So be patient with yourself and your process. Be careful not to judge yourself or to compare yourself to others on their journey. You know, we're all here at different levels of our evolution, and we all have unique challenges due to karmic contracts and past life traumas. So be kind and compassionate with yourself. And with this, for now, I send you my love and many, many blessings.